There's a clause in commercial leases that shows up all the time that either scares people half to death or they just sign it without even knowing what it was. And it's a really important clause called a personal guarantee. And that's what we're going to talk about today in episode 8 of Small Business CRE, talking about personal guarantees in commercial leases for commercial real estate. What we're going to cover today, we're talking about what a personal guarantee actually is and why a landlord often requires it. Then talking about the different types of personal guarantees, when it's reasonable to expect one and when it isn't. How can you approach negotiating one? And then also, this might be the most important part, the conversation you need to have before you sign one. Diving in, who am I? My name is Dan. I'm a commercial real estate agent working with small business owners in my own local market. I've helped over 100 small business owners, various types of business across all sectors, lease and buy commercial spaces for their businesses. And the personal guarantee question has come up quite often. I've had a lot of conversations around it. And I just want to make sure that all of my clients don't misunderstand it. And so hopefully I can help you with that in this video today. First off, talking about what actually is personal guarantee. Simply put, it's when an actual individual, a real person, yourself in the situation, is personally backing up the business obligations of a lease. So when a commercial lease is signed, generally speaking, it's the LLC or the corporation or whatever business entity of that business. That's what is what is technically signing the lease. And then the problem or the risk for a landlord is that if the business fails, the business and the business owner can potentially just kind of go file bankruptcy for the business, disband the LLC, then not to pay back the extra rent to the landlord. But the personal guarantee is that person, the actual real person, individual, personally backing up, guaranteeing that lease on top of the business entity, essentially. So what that actually would look like, let's say you're signing a 5-year lease, and let's just say that each year is $20,000 a year in rent, whatever that breaks down to a month, $1,600 or something. So a pretty small lease, let's roll with it. So let's say you sign that 5-year lease, so you committed to the landlord to pay essentially $100,000 for 5 years in rent. But what happens if your business fails after year one? There's still $80,000 of rent that you committed to and that the landlord was counting on that now might not get paid. Because again, if it was an LLC or corporation for the business and the business goes under, that could be disbanded, the business can file bankruptcy, whatever it might be, and then there's no way for the landlord to recover that lost rent. Whereas if there's a personal guarantee signed, the landlord can bypass that business entity and go after the individual personally. So they can go after your personal assets to help make themselves whole, make that loss whole, pay back that lost rent. Now, there's a few different types of personal guarantees. One is unlimited. So an unlimited personal guarantee, and again, this is more attorney language. So just high level information here, but unlimited is that you as the person signing that guarantee are liable for not only the remaining rent that you committed to, but also for any additional damages. That could be attorney fees, that could be releasing costs to fill the space, that could be lost rent, or even like interest on that lost rent, like any number of things. And so this is like a lot of exposure and a lot of risk. It's the most protection for the landlord, but it's the highest risk for you as a tenant. A limited guarantee is the opposite of that. It's where the liability is capped at a specific dollar amount. It could be an actual dollar amount, or more likely, it's going to be the amount of the lease that's left. So in our scenario here, it would be capped at the $80,000 of rent that was still due, but then nothing additional on top of that could be charged to you personally. There's a time limited guarantee where after a certain amount of time, the guarantee kind of falls off. So the guarantee only applies for a specific window and the liability ends. And this kind of ties in with the burn-off clause. This is actually more so a piece of language that gets added to a personal guarantee versus being a personal guarantee in itself. This is just saying that the guarantee expires after a set amount of time, so long as you as a tenant have paid rent on time, you've been a good tenant, you haven't caused any issues, the personal guarantee burns off after a certain period. So when generally is it reasonable to expect one, and when is it not? Honestly, it's not really unreasonable at any point. It's the landlord's property. They can request a personal guarantee if they want to. So it's not necessarily unreasonable, but where it should really be expected and where you honestly have very little negotiating power or room to fight it is if the landlord is investing any upfront money into the space. So if they're giving you a tenant improvement allowance, or if they're paying to renovate the space for you, or they're doing some kind of build out for you, they're taking on not only the risk of you as a tenant, but they're putting upfront capital to bring you in as a tenant. So they're putting dollars into the deal to start with. And so in that situation, it makes a lot more sense for them to have a personal guarantee for you to guarantee that lease since they've put money into it. And so if there's any kind of upfront investment that the landlord is putting into the space on your behalf, you really should probably expect to sign some kind of personal guarantee. Now, if it's a situation where the space is move-in ready, you're just going to move in and start operating your business. You're not really changing the space. It's not really costing the landlord anything. Then there's a lot less risk to the landlord. It's just the risk of losing you as a tenant essentially, and then having to release the space. But it's a lot less upfront cost and risk for them in that situation. So in that case, it may be less needed to have personal guarantee, and you might have some more room to negotiate that. I've seen, I mean, as far as the leases I come across, I'd say about half of them have personal guarantees in them, and half of them don't. So it really just depends on the landlord, and usually depends if that landlord has been burned before. If they've had a deal go south where they lost money because a tenant left and they didn't have a personal guarantee in place, they're probably using personal guarantees now. So depends a lot from landlord to landlord. Okay, why this matters, kind of talked about this already, but your LLC, your business entity, is the one probably signing the lease, and if that goes under, the landlord might have no remedy to get back their lost costs. Whereas if you personally sign it, you're backing up that person, that business entity personally. So if the business fails, then the landlord can come after you and your personal assets to pay those debts essentially. That is the beauty of the LLC, the limited liability corporation here in America. Limited liability corporation. I hope I got that right. Is that you can try a business, and if it goes under, it doesn't go after you personally, but in this case, the landlord, they want to have some kind of remedy in that situation. So, in an ideal world for you as a tenant, you really don't want to have to sign a personal guarantee. I guess the ideal scenario, but you should understand it's not an unrealistic request from a landlord, and it might just be a part of doing business and signing a commercial lease. So when it comes to trying to negotiate the personal guarantee in a lease, there's going to probably be a clause or a page specifically about that personal guarantee if it's in there. Ideally, sure, you don't have to sign one. That's great. Okay. Well, you might have to go find a property where the landlord doesn't require it, and you can sign there. But if it's a property where the landlord requires it, you might be stuck with it. So how can we try and negotiate it a little bit to try and mitigate your risk? Two main things I usually try to do is try to make sure it's not an unlimited guarantee. Try to make it a limited guarantee. So again, back to our scenario, if it's a $100,000 lease, make sure it's a limited guarantee to where you're only responsible for that amount. So if you do, if your business goes under or whatever, and you still have that $80,000 left, they can come after you for that amount, but they can't come after you for anything extra, attorney fees, lost rent costs, anything like that. So try to make it a limited guarantee. Have your attorney help you with this. Or then the other thing you can do is try to have a burn-off clause in that lease. So if it's a 5-year lease, if the landlord did some improvements to the space on your behalf, try to put in a burn-off clause that says, hey, if we rent the space for 3 years and we've been good tenants and we've never been late and all this kind of stuff, the personal guarantee burns off or it expires essentially at the end of year 3. So this at least removes a couple of years of liability on your behalf, but it gives the landlord 3 years of protection. They'll get back the costs they put into the space for you. It's kind of a nice in-between situation. So that's something I oftentimes recommend clients try to get a burn-off clause in there, so at least it's a limited time frame. Or if you're going to renew the lease, at least you're not guaranteeing it for an additional 5 years. Like try to not be personally guaranteeing a lease for 5, 10, 15 years. Try to have some kind of time limit there. Again, have an attorney help you with this. That's where there's invaluable and they're absolutely worth the cost of having those legal fees. So how that would actually look, you sign your lease, 5-year lease. If the personal guarantee will be active through years 1 through 3, and as long as you're on time and rent, you don't cause issues, whatever the exact criteria are. At the start of year 4, the personal guarantee essentially expires and it'd be automatic, I believe, unless it's written some other way. But it would just automatically expire and burn off at the end of year 4. So then for years 4 and 5, there's no personal guarantee. So if you did, unfortunately, shut down the business, things don't work out at year 4, you're not on the hook personally for that last year, year and a half, 2 years of rent. So this is a good kind of middle ground that gives both sides some protection. Now, the big conversation you should have before you sign a personal guarantee is you need to have a conversation with anyone in your life who could be affected by that personal guarantee, chasing you if your business goes under and pursuing your personal life. If you have a spouse or a partner, or if there's a business partner involved, their spouse or partner, anybody who could be affected by this should be involved in that conversation. You should know about it ahead of time because it is a risk. If you owe $80,000 of unpaid rents that the landlord can pursue you personally for and sue you for that could be your house, that could be your car, that could be, so I don't know if you can garnish wages, but you probably can, anything like that. So have a conversation with anyone in your life who could be impacted if that personal guarantee was ever actually put into effect or tested. So bottom line, personal guarantees, they're not unreasonable. They're not necessarily a bad thing. They're just something you should really be careful about and understand it is a large risk for you personally. There's no get out of jail free card anymore. If my business goes under, I'll just shut the doors. No, that can pursue you after that if you sign up a personal guarantee. So make sure you read the lease very closely, have your attorney read the lease, and understand what type of guarantees you're signing. Try to negotiate some limited liability on that, or a burn-off clause. Have your attorney help you with that, and then talk with anyone in your life who this could be that could be impacted by this, or you could have a divorce following afterwards, or whatever it might be. Thanks for watching. If you want a free PDF, link down below. Top 5 mistakes I see small business owners make when they're going to lease commercial real estate. If you make one of these mistakes, it could cost you thousands of dollars. So save yourself some money. Take a look at that. It's completely free. Until then, thanks for watching. See you in the next one.